When my daughter Sophia told me not to come to her wedding, I didn't cry or beg. Instead, I smiled, closed my phone, and made one phone call that would change everything. I'm Marcus Reynolds, and for the past 26 years my entire world has revolved around one person, my daughter Sophia. When her mother Claire died from cancer 14 years ago, I made a promise at that hospital bedside that I would be everything Sophia needed. Father, mother, protector, provider, cheerleader. I thought I had kept that promise. I was wrong. You see, most people look at me and see exactly what they expect. A 52-year-old guy in worn jeans and work boots, driving a Honda Accord that's seen better days, living in a modest 3-bedroom house in a middle-class neighborhood. They see a construction worker who got lucky, maybe saved up enough to send his kid to college. They're not entirely wrong, but they're not entirely right either. What they don't see is the empire I built in silence. Sophia doesn't know that the Reynolds construction company she thinks employs 50 people actually employs over 300. She doesn't know that those weekend trips I took to check job sites were actually visits to the 15 commercial properties I own across the city. She doesn't know that while she was stressing about student loans, I had already set aside enough money to buy her a house in cash. I wanted her to understand struggle, to appreciate success when it came, to never take anything for granted the way some wealthy kids do. Maybe I did too good a job. 2 years ago, Sophia started dating Tyler Brennan. The Brennans are what people in this city call old money, the kind of family that has their name on the hospital wings and country club plaques. Tyler works at his family's investment firm, drives a BMW that costs more than most people's annual salary, and has never known what it feels like to wonder if you can afford groceries and rent in the same week. I should have seen the changes coming. At first, it was small things. Sophia started correcting my grammar at dinner. She'd cringe when I'd show up to her apartment in my work clothes, covered in dust from a construction site. She stopped bringing Tyler around the house, always meeting him at restaurants or his place instead. Then came the engagement 6 months ago. I'll never forget that dinner when she announced it. We were at our usual spot, a little Italian place where we'd been going since she was 12. The same place where she used to tell me about her dreams, where she'd ask my advice about everything from school projects to college applications to her first heartbreak. "Dad," she said, fidgeting with her napkin, "Tyler and I are getting married." I felt my heart swell with pride and terror in equal measure. My little girl getting married. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Have you two talked about when? June 15th, at Grandview Manor Estate. She said it like I should be impressed, and honestly, I was. Grandview Manor is the most exclusive wedding venue in the city. I should know. I bought it 3 years ago. But Sophia didn't know that. She saw my silence as confusion, maybe even intimidation. "It's this really elegant place, Dad, very upscale. Tyler's family has connections there." What she didn't say, but what I heard loud and clear, was that it was the kind of place she worried I wouldn't fit into. Over the following months, I watched my daughter slip further away from me. Tyler's mother, Patricia Brennan, made it clear at our first meeting that she considered me a necessary inconvenience. "Marcus does construction work," she'd tell people, the way someone might say, "Marcus has a communicable disease." Tyler himself was polite but distant, clearly embarrassed by his future father-in-law's calloused hands and simple lifestyle. And Sophia, caught in the middle, began choosing their approval over our relationship. The text message that would change everything came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing plans for a new commercial development project. My phone buzzed, and I saw Sophia's name. For just a moment, I felt that familiar warmth, hoping she was calling to ask if I wanted to grab dinner, like we used to do. Instead, I read the words that would shatter everything I thought I knew about the daughter I had given my entire life to raise. But here's what Sophia didn't know about her old man. I didn't build a multi-million-dollar business by backing down when things got tough, and I sure as hell wasn't going to start now. Let me take you back to where this all started, because you need to understand the man I used to be to appreciate what I was about to become. 14 years ago, I was a different person entirely. Claire and I lived in a small apartment above my dad's auto repair shop, and I was working construction during the day while going to night school for business management. We were young, broke, and completely happy. Sophia was 12, all elbows and attitude, complaining about everything from her braces to her homework to the way I sang off-key in the car. Then Claire got sick. Ovarian cancer, stage 3 by the time we caught it. The doctors gave us 18 months if we were lucky. We got 16. During those 16 months, I watched the strongest woman I'd ever known waste away to nothing, but she never stopped fighting. Not for herself, for Sophia. "Marcus," she whispered to me 3 days before she died, gripping my hand with what little strength she had left. "Promise me something. Promise me you'll always be there for her no matter what. Even when she doesn't want you there, even when she pushes you away, especially then." I promised. I had no idea how hard that promise would be to keep. After Claire died, Sophia shut down completely. She stopped talking to me, stopped eating regularly, spent all her time locked in her room. I was drowning in grief myself, but I had made a promise. So I learned how to braid hair by watching YouTube videos. I figured out how to help with algebra homework I barely understood. I attended every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every soccer game, even when work was piling up and I was exhausted beyond measure. And slowly, gradually, we found our rhythm. I started Reynolds Construction with 3 guys and a beat-up truck 2 years after Claire died. Those were the lean years. Peanut butter sandwiches for dinner, shopping at thrift stores, me staying up until 2 in the morning doing paperwork after working a 12-hour day. But Sophia never went without. When her class went on a field trip, she went. When she needed a dress for homecoming, she got the one she wanted. When she decided she wanted to learn piano, I found a way to pay for lessons. I worked like a man possessed, and slowly the business grew. 1 truck became 3, 3 guys became 10. Small residential jobs became commercial contracts. By the time Sophia graduated high school, Reynolds Construction was bidding on city projects and shopping mall developments. But here's the thing. I never let success change how we lived. We stayed in the same house, a modest place in Oakwood Heights where Sophia had friends and memories. I kept driving used cars, kept shopping at the same grocery store, kept taking Sophia to the same pizza place every Friday night. I wanted her to understand that money was a tool, not an identity. I wanted her to value hard work and authenticity over appearances and status. Maybe I overdid it. By the time Sophia graduated from college, a degree I paid for in cash, though she thought it was student loans, she had become everything I'd hoped for. She was smart, driven, independent. She got a job at a marketing firm downtown and moved into a nice apartment that she thought she was paying for herself. She didn't know I was quietly covering half her rent through a shell company, just like I'd been doing with her car payments and health insurance. I was so proud of the woman she'd become. Strong like her mother, but without the burden of financial worry that had kept Claire awake at night during those early years. Then Tyler Brennan walked into her life, and everything changed. The first time she brought him home for dinner, I could see the wheels turning in his head. He was polite enough, shook my hand, complimented the pot roast, but I caught him looking around our modest living room with barely concealed confusion. Here was this accomplished, beautiful woman living in what he probably considered poverty. "Your dad seems nice," I heard him tell Sophia as they stood in the driveway afterward. "But he's so humble." The way he said humble made it sound like a character defect. That's when I realized I had made a critical error. In teaching Sophia the value of humility, I had failed to teach her how to recognize her own worth. And in keeping my success hidden, I had inadvertently made her ashamed of where she came from. The Brennan family represented everything I had deliberately avoided: wealth as identity, status as currency, appearances as truth. And my daughter was being seduced by all of it. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It crept in slowly, like water through a foundation crack, until one day I looked up and realized the daughter I knew was disappearing. It started with small corrections. "Dad, it's who, not that, when you're talking about people," Sophia would say during our Friday night dinners. Then it was my clothes. "Maybe you could wear something nicer when you pick me up from work," she suggested, after I showed up in my usual jeans and work shirt. I thought she was just growing up, becoming more professional. I was proud of her attention to detail. I should have seen the warning signs. The first real gut punch came 6 months into her relationship with Tyler. We were at our usual Italian place, and I was telling her about a big commercial project we'd just landed, a shopping center renovation that would keep my crew busy for 8 months. I was excited, maybe talking a little too loud about the details, when I noticed Sophia glancing around nervously. "Dad," she interrupted quietly, "could you maybe keep your voice down? People are looking." People are looking. As if being enthusiastic about my work was something shameful. As if the business that put food on our table and paid for her education was an embarrassment. That's when Tyler's mother, Patricia Brennan, entered our lives like a perfectly manicured hurricane. Our first meeting was at Tyler's birthday dinner at the country club. I wore my best suit, the one I'd bought for Sophia's college graduation, and I thought I looked pretty decent. Patricia looked at me like I'd tracked mud through her living room. "So, Marcus," she said, her voice dripping with the kind of fake sweetness that immediately puts you on guard, "Tyler tells me you work in construction." "I own Reynolds Construction," I corrected, trying to keep my voice steady. "We specialize in commercial development and restoration projects." "How nice," she replied, and somehow made those 2 words sound like an insult. "It must be so rewarding to work with your hands." The way she said it, you'd think I was digging ditches with a spoon. Later that evening, I overheard her talking to another woman at the bar. Tyler's girlfriend's father is in construction. Salt-of-the-earth type, you know, very rustic. The woman next to her made a sympathetic noise, like Sophia was dating someone whose father had a communicable disease. But the worst part wasn't Patricia's condescension. The worst part was watching Sophia shrink every time someone asked about me. When people at Tyler's social events inquired about her family, she'd mumble something about me being in construction and quickly change the subject. My daughter, who used to brag to her friends about the playhouse I built her from scratch, was now ashamed to mention my name. The engagement announcement should have been one of the happiest days of my life. Instead, it felt like a funeral for the relationship Sophia and I used to have. "We want something elegant," Sophia explained over dinner, her voice taking on that new tone she'd developed. Part apology, part defiance. "Grandview Manor Estate is absolutely perfect. Tyler's family knows the owner personally, so we were able to get a booking." I nearly choked on my wine. The owner they knew personally was me, but I'd purchased the property through an LLC. The manager probably had no idea who I was beyond some signatures on documents. "That sounds expensive, sweetheart. Are you sure you can afford—" "Dad, please." Sophia cut me off with the kind of sharp tone she'd never used with me before. "Tyler's family is helping with costs, and honestly, this is important to us. To me, I want everything to be perfect. Perfect, meaning without me, and everything I represented." Over the next few months, I watched the wedding planning consume my daughter like a fever. Every conversation was about flower arrangements, menu tastings, dress fittings, all organized by Patricia Brennan, all paid for by the Brennan family, all designed to create the kind of event that would photograph well in the society pages. I wasn't invited to any of it. "The mothers usually handle these things together," Patricia informed me during one of our rare interactions. "Since Sophia doesn't have a mother, I've taken it upon myself to guide her through the process." The casual cruelty of that statement, dismissing Claire's memory while positioning herself as Sophia's replacement, left me speechless. Then came that Tuesday afternoon, sitting in my office reviewing blueprints for a new hotel project, when my phone buzzed with a text message that would change everything forever. The message that would show me exactly how completely I had lost the daughter I'd spent 14 years trying to protect. I stared at that text message for what felt like an eternity, reading it over and over, hoping somehow the words would rearrange themselves into something less devastating. They didn't. Dad, I've been thinking about the wedding. Tyler's family has very specific expectations, and honestly, I'm worried you might not fit in. Maybe it's better if you don't come. I don't want any awkward moments on my special day. I hope you understand. My hands were shaking as I set the phone down on my desk. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. This was my little girl, the same child who used to wait by the window every evening for me to come home from work, who would run to me with scraped knees and broken toys, believing I could fix anything. The same daughter who once told her entire fourth-grade class that her daddy was the strongest, smartest man in the world. I don't want any awkward moments on my special day, as if my presence, the presence of the man who raised her alone, who worked 18-hour days to give her everything she needed, who held her while she cried about her mother's death, would be an awkward moment. I thought about calling her immediately, begging her to reconsider, reminding her of everything we'd been through together. I thought about showing up anyway, forcing a confrontation, making her choose between me and Tyler's family. I thought about a lot of things in those first few minutes of shock and rage. Then I remembered Claire's words. Promise me you'll always be there for her, no matter what, even when she doesn't want you there. That's when something shifted inside me. The hurt didn't disappear, but it crystallized into something else. Determination. My daughter needed to learn something, and apparently the gentle way wasn't going to work. I picked up my phone and called David Chen, my lawyer and one of the few people who knew the full scope of what I'd built over the past 14 years. David had handled every property acquisition, every business deal, every legal document that had transformed me from a struggling single father into one of the most successful developers in the city. David, I said when he answered, my voice steadier than I felt. I need you to pull some files for me. Sure, Marcus. What's going on? Remember that portfolio we've been building? The commercial properties? I was already opening my laptop, scrolling through documents I hadn't looked at in months. I need you to contact Grandview Manor Estate. Don't mention my name initially. I want to know exactly who they think owns the place and what the situation is with current bookings. There was a pause. David had been my lawyer long enough to know when I was planning something. Marcus, what are you thinking? My daughter's getting married there in 3 days. She just uninvited me because she's worried I might embarrass her in front of Tyler's wealthy family. I could hear the bitterness creeping into my voice. They apparently think they secured this venue through some kind of special connections. Jesus, Marcus, I'm sorry. But what are you planning to do? That was the question, wasn't it? What was I planning to do? I spent the next hour going through files, remembering deals I'd made, properties I'd acquired, businesses I'd built while living in that modest house and driving that Honda Accord. Grandview Manor was just one piece of a puzzle that included downtown office buildings, shopping centers, restaurant spaces, and luxury event venues throughout the city. I'd been so focused on staying humble, on teaching Sophia the right values, that I'd forgotten to teach her the most important lesson of all. Never be ashamed of who you are or where you come from. David, I said finally, I want you to do something for me. I want you to contact the venue and inform them that there's been a change in the ownership's involvement with the Brennan Reynolds wedding. Tell them the owner will be conducting a personal inspection on the day of the event. A personal inspection? Marcus, what are you really doing here? I looked at the photo on my desk, Sophia at her college graduation, her arm around me, both of us grinning like idiots. She'd been so proud that day, so grateful for everything I'd sacrificed to get her there. When had that gratitude turned into shame? I'm going to my daughter's wedding, I said quietly. She doesn't want her father there, but maybe she needs to meet the man who actually owns the place. And then what? I honestly didn't know. All I knew was that Claire had made me promise to always be there for Sophia, especially when she didn't want me there. I'd kept that promise through teenage tantrums, college heartbreaks, and career struggles. I wasn't about to break it now. Then we'll see what kind of woman I actually raised. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of perfect June weather that makes you believe in fairy tales. The irony wasn't lost on me as I stood in my bedroom, staring at two different outfits laid out on the bed. My best suit, the one I'd planned to wear to walk my daughter down the aisle, and a pair of worn jeans with a Reynolds construction polo shirt. I chose the jeans. Grandview Manor Estate looked even more spectacular than usual that morning. The gardens were in full bloom, white chairs arranged in perfect rows on the manicured lawn, an archway of roses positioned to catch the afternoon sunlight just right. I'd always been proud of this property, a restored 1920s mansion that I'd saved from demolition 5 years ago and turned into the city's premier wedding venue. I'd never imagined I'd be attending my own daughter's wedding here as an uninvited guest. I parked my Honda in the service area and grabbed my clipboard and hard hat from the back seat. Through the main entrance, I could see guests beginning to arrive in their expensive cars, women in designer dresses, stepping carefully on the gravel in their high heels. The Brennan family was holding court near the front steps, Tyler's father, Robert, gesturing expansively as he told some story to a group of admirers. And there was Sophia, absolutely radiant in her wedding dress, laughing at something Tyler was whispering in her ear. For a moment, seeing her so happy, I almost turned around and left. Maybe this was enough. Maybe seeing her joy from a distance was all a father could ask for. Then I saw Patricia Brennan approach one of my catering staff, a young woman named Maria who'd worked for the venue for 2 years, and watched her face transform into a mask of cold dismissal as she snapped her fingers to get Maria's attention. "Excuse me," Patricia's voice carried across the garden, sharp enough to cut glass. "These flowers are completely wrong. I specifically requested white roses, not cream. Do you people not understand the difference?" Maria, who had nothing to do with the floral arrangements and was simply trying to set up the gift table, looked confused and apologetic. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I handle catering, not flowers. I can find someone." "Don't make excuses," Patricia interrupted. "Just fix it and be quick about it. We have important guests arriving soon." That's when I realized this wasn't just about teaching Sophia a lesson. This was about dignity. Claire's dignity, my dignity, and the dignity of every hardworking person Patricia Brennan looked down on. I walked toward the main entrance, clipboard in hand, hard hat slightly askew. The first person to notice me was Robert Brennan himself. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice already irritated. "We're having a private event here. Whatever work you need to do can wait until Monday." I stopped walking and turned to face him, letting a small smile cross my face. "Actually, sir, I'm not here to work. I'm here because there seems to be some confusion about today's event." Patricia appeared at her husband's shoulder, her eyes narrowing as she looked me up and down. "I'm sorry, but you clearly don't belong here. This is a very exclusive event and—" "Ma'am," I interrupted gently, "I'm Marcus Reynolds. I own this property." The words hung in the air like a held breath. I watched Robert's face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and the dawning realization that he might have just made a very expensive mistake. "That's impossible," Patricia sputtered. "We booked this venue through the Carltons. They have connections with the owner, some property management company." "Reynolds Property Development," I said, pulling out my phone and showing them the LLC documents David had prepared. "That would be my company, has been for 5 years now." That's when Sophia noticed the commotion. I watched her approach, her face a canvas of emotions as recognition dawned. The man in work clothes talking to Tyler's parents wasn't just any contractor, it was her father. "Dad?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "What are you doing here, and what do you mean you own this place?" Tyler appeared beside her, his face flushed with embarrassment. "There must be some mistake. My family knows the owner personally. You work in construction." I looked at my daughter, my beautiful, confused, mortified daughter, and felt 14 years of love and sacrifice crystallize into this single moment. "Sophia," I said quietly, "I do work in construction. I built this empire with these hands while making sure you never felt different from your wealthy classmates. I wanted you to understand the value of hard work, not the burden of wealth. But I never wanted you to be ashamed of who you are or where you come from." The wedding guests had stopped their conversations. Everyone was staring at us now. The man in work clothes who claimed to own their fairy tale venue, and the bride who looked like her world was crumbling around her. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. 100 guests watched as my daughter stared at me, her wedding dress suddenly seeming too heavy, too much. I could see her mind racing, trying to reconcile the man she'd been ashamed of with the truth standing before her. "You own this place," she whispered. Not a question, but a statement, as if saying it out loud might make it real. "You own Grandview Manor. You've owned it this whole time." "For 5 years," I confirmed gently. "Along with the Meridian office complex downtown, Harborview Shopping Center, the Riverside Restaurant District, and 13 other commercial properties throughout the city." Tyler's mouth fell open. That's impossible. You drive a Honda. You live in Oakwood Heights. You wear—" He gestured helplessly at my work clothes. "I wear clothes that don't make me forget where I came from," I said. "I drive a car that gets me where I need to go, and I live in the neighborhood where I raised my daughter, where she has memories of her mother." Patricia Brennan had gone completely pale. "But the connections. The Carltons said they knew the owner personally. The Carltons leased 2 storefronts in my Harbor View property," I explained. "They probably mentioned knowing a property owner. Sometimes the truth gets embellished along the way." Robert cleared his throat, his businessman's instincts finally kicking in. "Mr. Reynolds, we clearly had some misunderstandings. Perhaps we could discuss this privately." "No." Sophia's voice cut through the air like glass. Everyone turned to look at her, and I saw something I hadn't seen in months, the strong, determined woman I'd raised. "No, this needs to be said here, in front of everyone." She took a shaky breath, tears streaming down her face. Mascara be damned. "Dad, I told you not to come to my wedding because I was ashamed. Ashamed of your clothes, your job, your car, your house. I was ashamed of the man who worked 3 jobs to pay for my college, who learned how to braid hair and help with algebra homework when Mom died. I was ashamed of the person who taught me that character matters more than appearances." Her voice broke, but she continued. "Tyler's family made me feel like I needed to apologize for you, and I did. I apologized for the best man I've ever known because I was so desperate to fit into their world that I forgot my own worth." Tyler stepped forward, his face flushed. "Sophia, you don't understand. My family didn't mean—" "Your family meant exactly what they said." Sophia turned to him, and I saw Claire's fire in her eyes. "Your mother called my father rustic, like he was some kind of curiosity. She dismissed my mother's memory like it was nothing. And you stood there and let it happen because you were embarrassed, too." Patricia tried to interject, but Sophia held up her hand. "I spent so much energy being ashamed of my father that I forgot to be proud of what he accomplished. He didn't inherit his wealth. He built it. He didn't network his way to success. He earned it. And he did it all while making sure I never felt less than anyone else." She turned back to me, her wedding dress trailing in the grass as she stepped closer. "Dad, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway. I don't deserve to have you walk me down that aisle, but I'm begging you to do it anyway, because I finally understand what Mom saw in you, what she wanted me to remember. I felt my own eyes filling with tears. What's that, sweetheart? That real strength isn't about impressing people. It's about building something lasting, something meaningful. It's about showing up for the people you love, even when they don't deserve it. Even when they tell you to stay home. The wedding guests were completely silent now. Some were crying. Others looked uncomfortable, probably wondering if they should leave. The Brennan family stood frozen in their humiliation. I reached out and took my daughter's hands. Sophia, you are exactly the woman your mother and I hoped you'd become. You just needed to remember who raised you. Will you walk me down the aisle, Dad? Will you give me away to a man who I hope will love me half as much as you do? I looked over at Tyler, who was staring at his fiancée like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. Then I looked back at my daughter, my strong, beautiful, flawed, perfect daughter. Sweetheart, I said, I wouldn't miss it for the world. As we walked toward that rose-covered archway, I whispered a promise to Claire. I kept my word. I was there when she needed me most, especially when she didn't want me there. And for the first time in months, my daughter squeezed my arm and whispered back, "Thank you for never giving up on me, Dad. Thank you for teaching me what real wealth looks like."